welcome to today's On This Day in Tudor History. You probably know by now, but I'm Claire Ridgway, founder of the Tudor Society and also the Anne Boleyn Files websites, also author of several history books. I'm with you every day, bringing you On This Day in Tudor History videos with lots of background noise of dogs barking and cat scratching and all sorts. So do forgive me for that, please. Today I'm taking you back to 1539, and I know you've been missing executions, haven't you? I haven't done any for a few days, so we're back to an execution today. For on this day in 1539, diplomat and courtier Sir Nicholas Carew was beheaded on Tower Hill in London. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Sir Nicholas Carew and how he came to this rather sticky end. Now, we don't know his exact birth date. It's the same with lots of Tudor people because of the fact that births didn't have to be registered. He was born in or before 1496, sort of around that time, and he was the eldest son of Sir Richard Carew of Beddington in Surrey and Richard's wife Malene Oxenbridge. Now, Carew was brought up at court, at the royal court, and he was serving the king as a groom of the Privy Chamber by 1511. So this was King Henry VIII. In 1515, he became an esquire of the body and also one of the king's cipherers. Now, although that may sound a bit like he was a spy or something, a cipherer was actually just a cupbearer. So that's a position that he held at that time. And in 1518, he became a gentleman of the Privy Chamber. So he's rising very quickly in the court of King Henry VIII. Now, his wife, Elizabeth, who he married in 1514, was the daughter of Sir Thomas Bryan, who was the Vice-Chamberlain of Queen Catherine of Aragon. And her mother was Lady Margaret Bryan, who you might have heard of, because Lady Margaret Bryan was a governess of Princess Mary, the future Mary I, and then Princess Elizabeth, the future Elizabeth I. So he's married into a family who are also royal favourites as well. Now, Carew was best friends with Sir Francis Bryan, his brother-in-law, and he was also a very good friend of Charles Brandon, Duke of Suffolk, who of course was a royal favourite, being the best friend and brother-in-law of King Henry VIII. So Carew was in this circle of favourites, and he himself was a royal favourite. He was very close to the king. In fact, he was so close to the king that by 1518, other courtiers were sort of complaining about his status with the king. He accompanied the king to the Field of Cloth of Gold, that lavish event in France in 1520. And he also then went on to undertake important diplomatic missions for the king in the 1520s. And then in 1522, he was made the king's master of the horse, a very, very important position. Now, his biographer, Stamford Lemberg, who wrote his biography for Oxford Dictionary of National Biography, writes that, like a number of other courtiers, Carew concealed his true feelings about Henry VIII's divorce. He was a close friend of the king, but ties of loyalty also bound him to Catherine of Aragon and Princess Mary. So he'd got, his family were close to Catherine of Aragon. His father-in-law was Catherine of Aragon's Vice-Chamberlain. His mother-in-law, Lady Margaret Bryan, was governess at one time to Princess Mary. And so he had these sort of family links to Catherine of Aragon and Princess Mary. And really his sympathy sort of lay with them, with Henry VIII's annulment proceedings. And in 1535, so this is when King Henry VIII was married to Anne Boleyn, Carew sheltered the king's fool, who had angered the king by calling Anne Boleyn a ribald and the Princess Elizabeth a bastard. So, that's, you can understand Henry VIII's fury at this, and Carew doing quite a reckless thing, really, in sheltering a man, the king's fool, that the king was furious with. In April 1536, so a month before Anne Boleyn was executed, well, just under a month, the same month that he was elected as a Knight of the Garter, he was recorded by Eustace Chapuis, the imperial ambassador, as coaching Jane Seymour, who the king was having a flirtation with, in how to appeal to the king. So he was helping the Seymours and Jane Seymour. He was helping her to appeal to the king. So he was working against Anne Boleyn. He was also recorded as telling Mary, King Henry VIII's daughter, to be of good cheer, for shortly the opposite party would put water in their wine. So he's encouraging her. Then in May 1536, after Anne Boleyn's arrest, Jane Seymour was sent away from court to sort of protect her reputation and to prevent gossip about her relationship with the king at this time. And where did she go? Well, she was housed in Sir Nicholas Carew's country home. So he was right there in that at that time, supporting the king, supporting Jane Seymour and the Seymours, while Anne Boleyn obviously was falling from grace. Now, as a reward for all of his help in 1536, Carew was chosen to be in charge of the font at Prince Edward's baptism. That's the future King Edward VI. His baptism in October 1537. And then a month later, his wife was chosen as one of the ladies in attendance at Queen Jane Seymour's funeral. Now, Carew managed to hold on to royal favour until he was finally arrested on the 31st of December 1538. Now, his biographer, Stamford Lemberg, believes that Carew's fall was down to Thomas Cromwell, who, of course, was the king's right-hand man at this time. He believes that Cromwell saw Carew as an enemy and so wanted him out of the way. Carew was tried and convicted of treason on the 14th of February 1539. It was alleged that a letter had been found at the Marchioness of Exeter's home, which was evidence of Sir Nicholas Carew being involved in a conspiracy with the Marquis of Exeter and Baron Montague, and plotting with Cardinal Pole, who was Montague's exiled brother, and Pole was seen as an enemy of King Henry VIII. So he was convicted of treason for this alleged letter, which showed, his part in this conspiracy, and he went to the scaffold. Chronicler Edward Hall records that on the scaffold, Carew made a goodly confession, both of his folly and superstitious faith, giving God most hearty thanks that ever he came in the prison of the Tower, where he first savoured the life and sweetness of God's most holy word, meaning the Bible in English, which there he read by the mean of one Thomas Phelps, the keeper of that prison. So it appears from Hall's words there that Carew, in his last days in the Tower, turned away from his Catholic faith and embraced the Reformed faith, and went to his death believing in the Reformed faith. Now, chronicler Charles Risley records that Carew's head and body were buried together in the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula within the confines of the Tower of London. But Stamford Lemberg notes that John Stowe, writing slightly later, records Carew's remains being interred at St. Botolph's Church in Aldgate in London. So it seems that although Carew's remains after his execution on Tower Hill were taken to the Tower of London's chapel, that they were then moved at a slightly later date to the Church of St. Bottol's. So being a royal favourite, being close to the king, as you know by now from my previous videos on executions, had its risks. You could rise in favour, you could have a wonderful career. I mean, this man was a real royal favourite. He had powerful friends. He became the king's master of the horse. He was one of the king's intimates. But it had its risks. It had its rewards, but it had its risks. And, you know, if you make enemies at court, then you can be brought down. And Sir Nicholas Carew came to this very sticky end on the 8th of March 1539 on a scaffold on Tower Hill in London. I'm so glad that you're enjoying these On This Day in Tudor History videos. I love reading your comments, and it's so nice to have lots of likes as well. You can subscribe by just clicking the button there, and of course hit the bell to be notified as well. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back tomorrow. Take care. Bye bye.